You can start now.
So everyone can see us now?
Yes, yes.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you join us from, and welcome to Democracy Under Attack, how we fight back and win. I'm Dayana Mosquera from Global Exchange, speaking to you from Colombia, and I'm honored to be co-hosting today with my colleague Ted Luis from San Francisco. Hi Ted, how are you? Before we begin, just a quick note, this webinar will be conducted in English, but we have live Spanish interpretation. If you like to switch languages, simply click the globe icon at the bottom of the screen. And if you have any questions during the discussion, please drop them in the comments. We'll make sure our panelists address them later. Para nuestros participantes en español, bienvenidas y bienvenidos. Mi nombre es Dayana Mosquera.
Let's speak English. Welcome, my name is Dayana Mosquera. This webinar will be carried out in English, but we have interpretation to Spanish. To access the interpretation function, please click on the globe icon, the globe button, and select English. Remember that if you have any questions, you can put it in the Q&A section, and we will make sure that our panelists have an opportunity to respond to your questions during the session. Welcome.
So we can continue. Today's conversation is a democracy gathering the global exchange alongside our equal partners in the region we have organized in Guatemala. We'll be hearing from two participants, Flor García Mencos from Guatemala and Chamberlain from Mexico. Both of them will share their insights and experiences during this event. Our powerful convening in Guatemala, just that we held just a few weeks ago, brought together 147 participants from 14 countries and 102 organizations with agreements to continue working, planning, and organizing across borders to defend many kinds of democracy, local, national, community, and liberty that are under attack throughout the Americas. Let me tell you that the spirit of solidarity and strategic thinking that emerged from Guatemala was palpable. If you like to dive deeper, we encourage everyone listening today to visit the link in the chat we are going to put there to see and listen to the full proceedings in Spanish and English. Please feel free to share them with your partners and networks. To set the stage for this discussion, we want to share a video from the event itself, highlighting why Guatemala serves as such a powerful and important location for this gathering.
Noviembre 2024, unos aliados de Estados Unidos se comunican con nosotros en Guatemala y nos dicen: estamos sumamente preocupados, la democracia está bajo amenaza, la victoria de Trump pone en riesgo décadas de construcción democrática. Nosotros en Guatemala nos dedicamos a la investigación social y si bien entendíamos la preocupación, también entendemos que nosotros no llevábamos 1, 2 ni 3 años en riesgo de democracia. En países como el nuestro, la democracia quizás nunca llegó a todos los rincones y algunos rincones a donde llegó no cumplió con lo que prometió de mejorar las vidas. Siempre fue escasa y siempre fue a conveniencia de algunos pocos. Eso permitió, obligó, incentivó la necesidad de que surgieran otros modelos, de que surgieran otras opciones, de que los pueblos buscaran y reafirmaran sus tradiciones ancestrales de asambleas, que los universitarios desarrollaran sus propios mecanismos deliberativos y participativos, que las organizaciones se replantearan los modelos de toma de decisión. Si bien es cierto que el mundo enfrenta una crisis fuerte, si bien es cierto que las democracias liberales de todo el mundo están teniendo como resultado la elección de tiranos, déspotas que están tirando por la borda toda la institucionalidad que se construyó en décadas, la democracia de los pueblos y la democracia de las organizaciones urbanas ha corrido riesgos y amenazas desde hace mucho tiempo. Hoy el contexto nos permite sentarnos platicar, entender desde cuándo hay amenazas, qué cosas se han agravado y cuáles son las alternativas a las democracias liberales que los países promulgan como la solución a todos los problemas. Esa es la motivación principal del encuentro Democracias bajo ataque. Y el espacio de Guatemala es especialmente valioso para realizarlo por diversas razones. La primera es territorial. Es una brecha de tierra que conecta el norte de América con el sur de América. La segunda es política. Guatemala ha sido centro durante los últimos años de una serie de eventos políticos que han desarrollado articulaciones y procesos de movilización de comunidades indígenas, de organizaciones urbanas, de organizaciones de mujeres, de estudiantes y de muchos otros colectivos para defender un resultado electoral de una democracia que no nos parece ni de cerca perfecta, pero que hoy por hoy nos permite construir mejores condiciones para seguir luchando y para seguir buscando los cambios profundos que deseamos.
Están en silencio, no se escucha.
Perdón. Okay. As you can see, the video truly captures the essence of Guatemala. In this urgent context, Guatemala offers not only a cautionary tale, but a beacon of hope. Though far from free of challenges, this country has emerged as a powerful reminder that people's movements grounded in community-based resistance and indigenous governance can defend democracy against even the most impossible odds. I want to ask you, why did Global Exchange want to help convene this gathering with allies in Guatemala?
Thank you, Dayana, and thank you for hosting this talk with me. The voice you just heard in the video was the voice of Minor Alonso. He's the leader of a fantastic organization called FOCO in Guatemala. And we wanted to work with them because Guatemala and FOCO is an organization that has inspired us with their insight, their ability to work with all kinds of people, their deep political commitments. And Guatemala is a country that I personally, and I think a lot of people share this, have tremendous admiration for. The Guatemalan people have struggled in a way that few others have had to in our times. So when we're thinking about how do we respond to the emergency that the election of Donald Trump has thrust on our hemisphere, on our world, there can be no better example of how to resist fascism, in my opinion, than what we've seen in Guatemala. Minor Alonso and FOCO are people that we met, Global Exchange met in the context of struggle. In the case of these folks, we first met them in 2016 when they joined a caravan that we were organizing from all the way from Tegucigalpa, Honduras, through El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico, all the way to the United Nations, bring the voices of people who had suffered the drug war to the General Assembly special session that was being held that year. That was also the year that Donald Trump first came to power. And so this journey to Guatemala now was a reckoning of what does it mean now that this second wave of fascism that has emerged from Trump's election. What does it mean for us in the hemisphere? What does it mean for political organizing? What does it mean for traditional communities? And so these were the questions that we came together to answer. And the context of Guatemala is enriched by the very recent history of democratic uprising against what has been called the Pact of the Corrupt in Guatemala. It's something that if people in the United States look at what we're currently experiencing, where a group of people that have no restraints, no moral restraints, no social restraints, get a hold of absolute power, they can manipulate things. And that's what Guatemala was suffering when in 2023, when something of a political miracle occurred, and Bernardo Arevalo came to power over all the objections of the pact of the corrupt. It's a longer and inspiring story, but it's very important to see that not only did he come to power with the popular support at the polls, but he was also brought to power by the resistance of hundreds of communities around Guatemala that effectively shut down the country to make sure that the pact of the corrupt didn't use the courts and all of their tricks to keep him out of power. So we wanted to go to Guatemala to share that inspiration, and we really did find that inspiration in Guatemala. It was an uplifting experience, I think, for those of us who are sometimes feeling like, particularly here in the United States, that every day is an assault on our conscience. Every day is a new outrage and assault on human rights, on human dignity. And so this was a very important moment for us. And I would like to help us figure this out, to help us unpack all of the insights that came out of this gathering. I would like to invite Flor García Mencos, who's a new friend from Guatemala, co-founder and executive director of Circula Restorative Leadership Center in Guatemala, who does work that's at the heart of us leadership to build a more just and peaceful society. And I'd also like to introduce an old friend, Michael Chamberlain, who I've known in global change, has worked with since the 1990s in any number of struggles. He is current president at Consultora, Solidaria in Mexico, and he's a non-resident fellow at the Center for International Policy. Michael brings a wealth of experience, understanding and navigating the complex political landscape of the Americas. Welcome, Flor and Michael. We're honored to have both of you today.
Welcome, Flor and Michael.
Thank you for the invitation.
No, thank you for being here. We want to open this with one question for both of you, and then we continue with individual questions. So you both were there and participated in those powerful exchanges and reflections in Guatemala. I want to ask you, what was the thing that most stood out to you?
Thank you. Especially thank you for including me in this conversation and even more in the democracies under attack event. It was really important to me to be there. So for me, the most important thing was that the gathering brought together so many key actors, and they were people with real political understanding and real political incidents too. That were allowed to create a truly safe space for honest and courageous conversations. And that was the first step that the gathering really started with, was to create agreements and values together to say how we want to take care of this space and of each other. So that was really powerful and set the tone for the rest of the day. And it wasn't just a symbolic meeting. I love that it was a space where the urgency of taking actions to defend democracy was addressed in a grounded and committed way. With no makeup. We went directly into it in a very courageous way. Yes. And the fact that these conversations were allowed to unfold, given the time for deep and collective reflection, made the dialogue even more impactful. And I think that kind of exchange is very rare and very much needed right now. So that's what most this stand for me.
Thank you, Flor. Michael, love to hear your response.
Thank you. Well, I guess it was the diversity of movements gathering on the first hand. I mean, it was from indigenous communities to human rights defenders to LGBTQ movements, and discussing that's the second thing, coming together to discuss about democracy, which is something that we don't discuss much. And I think it's right now, when we have this crisis along the continent, I think it's crucial to start discussing these issues. And well, I have also to highlight that it was from all over the country, from Argentina and Chile to Canada. So that was great, and I really enjoyed being there. And also thank you for the invitation.
Well, Michael, to get into the analysis here, we noted at the gathering how in places like the United States, the gatekeepers of democracy have been eliminated. How do you see the erosion of institutional checks and balances playing out across the Americas? I know it's not just a problem in the United States. We feel it all the time. And what are the specific consequences for independent media and civil society organizations who are so often on the front lines of these struggles?
Well, what we're looking at is the closing of spaces. It's not only about problem grants, which has become an issue now, especially now that USA closed their offices, and that has an effect in the whole region. But also, we've seen how the media and human rights defenders have been publicly attacked by people in power, criminalized, or even detained, killed, disappeared. If we talk in terms of democracy, there's no space for criticism. We just came back from Guatemala, and the police in El Salvador took from Cristo Sal, which is something we all mobilize around. We've seen harassment.
Can you say just a little bit more about that for our audience who might not know who that is?
Brut works for Cristo Sal. He's the chief for corruption at this NGO, and just after we came from El Salvador, don't remember exactly the day, but it was a few days after, she was taken from her home, and basically she was disappeared for a day or so, and she's been taken by the police, and we don't know, at least I don't know what she's been accused of, but it is an attack against human rights defenders, and especially women's human rights defenders. But I mean, Ted, we've seen harassment before. I mean, that's a common ground in this whole years. But what's new is the attack against checks and balances. And Trump, for example, uses a 19th century law on national security for his executive orders. But we see how right-wing or supposedly left-wing governments are concentrating political power by eliminating checks and balances, capturing the judiciary, exacerbating punitive measures, and promoting militarism. We can see it from Milei in Argentina to again El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, we see it in Mexico, and also in the United States. Criminalizing, reducing space for civil society participation, and attacking freedom of expression, criminalizing poverty and diverse identities. That's not only a thing in the United States, and covering up corruption, impunity, and criminal or institutional violence. And what we're looking at is in the name of democracy, absolute powers are created. In the name of the people, new authoritarianisms emerge. So this is something that we should be discussing how this is happening in the region, and how we should tackle it.
Building on this, Flor, I would like to ask you, during the convening in Guatemala, everyone emphasized the prudent nature of democracy under attack. From your point of view, what are ways democracy is currently being undermined in the region?
pretty much everything that Michael just said. Like it's kind of a formula that they are using. The criminalization, many countries we're seeing a dangerous concentration of power in the executive branch and the use of the law and the weakening of the institutions. So there's also this increasing of criminalization, so the sense of fear also touch on trauma for us, because we have lived through civil war, we have lived through those kind of stories, and they are playing with those symbolism. When they went and take to prison community and indigenous leaders recently in Guatemala, they use a white card with the same characteristics that we remember it was used during the war. So they are playing with all this really kind of an evil strategy to control the population through fear, and that's really serious and really like from the worst intentions that you can think. Yes, we of course are worried. And one moment during this conference that we share together that really stayed with me was when an independent journalist shared that even if the independent media outlets in the region join forces and combine their reach, they will still be overshadowed by a single click from President Kelly. So that just gives you an image of the crisis that we are facing, the power that is being used also through the media. So it's really an unbalanced fight here because they hold all the powers, and that's something that we see here that is advancing. And when I say here, I mean all over Latin America. So behind all of this, we know there are powerful networks, there are political, economical, and criminal networks that operate with impunity. They keep undermining the rule of law. These aren't isolated issues. They form a pattern that is putting the democracy system in the region in serious threat. And it's really hard to break because it's so complex, and by now it's so strong. This combination of actors that have interest in just not letting democracy work as it should. And in some cases, the threat takes a different shape, like in Guatemala, because here in Guatemala is a clear example. The current executive branch, which I still think is a decent one, actually doesn't hold that much power because the previous government made sure that the judiciary remained in the hands of corrupt networks, mafias really. So even when you have like a well-intentioned president, democracy is still in danger because the system is rigged to block any meaningful change. So it's a reminding for us and for everyone that dismantling these authoritarian structures and corrupt structures requires more than just winning an election. So we should be paying more and more attention everywhere, to the other systems that will hold democracy, like the courts and everywhere where power is held.
Thanks, Flor. And Michael, as Flor was just saying, and as we heard repeatedly at the gathering, this is a moment of deep crisis and weakness for traditional democracy. I know you've been at this a long time. What are the strategies that you think and that you heard about during the gathering that people are thinking about to build the kind of people power that we need to fight back in the comprehensive way that Flor was just saying that we need to?
Well, I think that listening to the participants in Guatemala, what I heard is that, different from other moments, there is no government or institutions or anyone where we can like demand the respect for our rights and local struggles. There's a lack of rule of law in this sense, and there's also a crisis at the international institutions like the UN, for example, and the UN system for human rights, and so different than I mean. What makes us weak is that we have to learn new ways to fight and to struggle and to bring our demands again back. So I think, and that's what the gathering made me reflect afterwards, is that we must be able to see the context further than our local demands. And that was something interesting that we saw in Guatemala, because we could see indigenous demands with young people demanding also all sorts of things, and coming together and talking about it. And I think that's somehow is the way. I mean, we have to come together I think in an alliance to promote and defend democratic rules and values. We discuss a lot in that meeting. We should first discuss it among our movements. Are we being democratic, inclusive? Are we being respectful of how others think different than me? Within our communities, our own movements, organizations, that's like the first thing. But I think it's a discussion to bring to our communities, and also to the rule of law and national institutions. That's the lacking. I think we must fight not just to resist the powerful, but to create a system where no one is more powerful than others. Not just to survive capitalism, but to find ways to finally live together in justice and equality. I think that's the aim. And that's a quest for civil society like us, not for politicians who benefit from this system of extraction, as you said. And I think right now, looking at what's going on, not just in our region, but also in Europe and elsewhere, we are on the brink of war. Either we use this moment to come together, or we'll live hiding alone with regrets. So to wrap it up, we need to come together, Ted, with different movements, as we did in Guatemala this time, with, of course, our local demands, our individual or particular demands, but also coming together how to build a different world where we can all live together. And I think that is the real discussion, the bottom line of what democracy means.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Building on what Michael said, and you also on what Ted mentioned before, Flor, I wanted to ask you, I mean, the resistance we see in Guatemala, particularly for indigenous community, is truly historic and offers a powerful model from my point of view. I wanted to ask you, what are the elements of community-based resistance and indigenous governance that gives rise to mobilization with such a discipline, legitimacy, and strategic clarity, even in the face of seemingly overwhelming odds?
Thank you. First, I want to say that to answer that question, the perfect person will be an indigenous leader, but I'm going to be as respectful as I can because I work close to them and I can share what I have learned. So what we're seeing in Guatemala actually is the result of a long tradition of indigenous governance rooted in collective decision-making, not individual mindset, right? But collective decision-making deep with territorial ties that are really meaningful. and symbolic also, and a strong ethical commitment to the common good. So indigenous communities have developed their own forms of organization and justice over centuries, and often they are functioning in parallel or even in resistance against the state institutions that have historically excluded them or repressed them. Leaders are chosen when you see the communities and the way they choose the person that is going to lead for a period of time, that community organization. They are chosen not for community, for political gain, but because they have shown service to the community, wisdom, and a moral clarity. So that's a big, the contraposition of how politics works and how this indigenous wisdom works is huge. It's something that maybe we don't need to invent new ways, but to look into those ways of organization and wisdom and learn from them, because that's how they have resisted so many things, as Ted said at the beginning. So that's, I think, that's what gives the movement an internal coherence and a discipline that is very hard to break. So mobilizations don't come from an individual ambition. They emerge for assemblies, for consensus, from shared sense of responsibility. That's why even in the face of criminalization, threats, violence, the resistance remains so strategic and focused. And they are not improvising. They are defending a way of life. It's not defending one government or one party. It's defending a way of life, a system of values, and a vision for the future that is more meaningful than maybe what we can understand from another mindset. So in the 2023 mobilizations, they were led by indigenous organizations, but also we need to recognize that a broader collective memory emerged in that moment. So Guatemala, because Guatemala has a long tradition of popular organizations, union movements, student movements, neighborhood collectives. So we all came together once again in defense of a way of life that we don't want to lose. In that moment, we will keep that memory, I think, for future generations. And this oral tradition also is something that has kept alive the memory of and the wisdom of resistance. What is beautiful is that in the middle of all that darkness, during more than 100 days, in the streets, the whole country didn't just protest, but what happened is that we rebuilt a sense of community. It was a protest with art, with dance, with joy, and I think that there's also a key part on that, because once hope takes hold, it has the power to shift the course of history.
Thank you so much, Flor, for sharing this. I wanted also to emphasize that the gathering in Guatemala was more than just analysis of the crisis. It was also a laboratory of ideas, strategies, and collective action. For me, it was about finding ways to win, to move from crisis to a strategy. That's why I want us to have a look of another video from the gathering that captures this spirit of collective action and alternative building, as Flor and Michael have mentioned.
Siento que estos escenarios nos permiten organizarnos desde los micropoderes a los macropoderes y entender que podemos generar escenarios desde lo pequeño a lo más grande.
La democracia debe ser igual para todos y todas, pero también descentralización y sobre todo voluntad de diálogo, voluntad de escucha, voluntad de aplicar las demandas de todos los sectores o actores sociales.
Y ante un problema que se presenta, comienzan las asambleas, los debates, asambleas que duran días enteros y hasta pueden durar una semana, en donde participan los varones, las mujeres, las niñas, los niños, y es la comunidad debatiendo. Eso para mí es un ejemplo de democracia.
Tener medios independientes garantiza, por lo menos ayuda a construir una democracia. En nuestro caso debemos construir nuestros propios medios, nuestras propias redes y por supuesto luchar desde los contenidos y desde los símbolos.
La democracia es la posibilidad de disentir, de llegar a acuerdos, de llegar a consensos, pero también a poder pensar distinto para construir un país donde las mayorías sociales que históricamente han sido excluidas puedan tener una vida digna y acceso a derechos humanos, que ha sido algo que ha sido concentrado para muy pocas personas en el mundo.
Quienes han logrado las victorias son precisamente las personas que se levantan todos los días con convicción, con el corazón, con la empatía, a cambiar y transformar el mundo. Las cosas fáciles ya la hicieron otros. A nosotros nos corresponde hacer las cosas imposibles y las más difíciles. Y allí está el honor y allí está el fin que debemos perseguir todos como seres humanos. Buscar que el amor nos gobierne, que la solidaridad nos una y que la lucha continúe.
Well, this video truly shows a little bit of the incredible diversity of people that were in Guatemala and the powerful commitments that also were made. I recall that one of the concepts that it was repeatedly shared during the conversations was the concept of intergenerational dialogue and embracing different perspectives. Actually, one of the speakers noted that people, especially people, young people, are far more drawn to messages of hate. That's why I wanted to ask you, Flor, how do we foster these crucial intergenerational conversations and create spaces for healing and historical memory that counter the seduction of fascism?
Thank you. It's so important that we connect to each other and that we have those exchange. I think that we can foster that intergenerational dialogue by first recognizing that historical memory is not a luxury, it's not a waste of time, it's a surviving tool. There are so many strategies and memories and lessons that we can learn from our history, and we still have the people alive that can tell us firsthand how they fight. And of course, young people have a view that is different because their own experience of the war right now is different, you know, but one is just as valuable as the other. And during the gathering, there were moments of real tension around generational perspectives. But it was powerful that those tensions were not silenced. They were addressed with respect, simply by creating a space where different generations can come together and truly listen to one another, and that made a difference. It's a reminder that dialogue is not about always agreement or a dialogue between the people that think the same or are the same in the same generation, but we need to come together with our difference and just be present and in recognition of each other. So that's why I deeply believe in restorative dialogue. I think it's so powerful, not to solve everything, but is that just create the conditions as we experienced during the gathering for people to come together and, you know, close a little bit those gaps and through just telling stories. And I think that's something that is very deep in our cultures, and we are losing that memory of sitting together and really discussing and hearing the experiences of each other. I think we need to really go back to those practices.
Absolutely. And Michael, in looking ahead, we talked about the necessity of creating rooted, embodied territorial communication strategies that reject neutrality. In your opinion, in your view, how can our grassroots movements, indigenous communities, other groups in struggle effectively leverage these communication approaches to counter the dominant narratives that are out there? How can we amplify our voices on behalf of democracy, especially when traditional media that we've organized strategies to try and break into is falling apart?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking on the last question on intergenerational dialogue and what's going on with communities, and that you note that during the war in Chiapas, how communities could resist paramilitary groups and the presence of the military, and they were able to come together and a strong opposition to the government. And most of the communities, I think, also Mayan communities, have the same wisdom than Mayan communities in Guatemala. But where we're looking now, again, for example, in Chiapas, is how social media distorts and divides communities. And now young people from communities are either being attracted by criminal groups or recruited forcibly, and but with these ideas that are basically not under discussion, at least not under a community discussion, communal discussion. And I think we have to overcome, because these kind of strategies are not neutral. They're trying to divide, and they're trying to convince, especially young people in indigenous communities. We've seen that in Mexico, all over, in Guerrero, in Oaxaca, in Chiapas, in Jalisco, Michoacan. What these new criminal groups are doing, the paramilitary groups in the 90s weren't able to do it, because they have this new weapon of communication who's dividing us. So I think we have to find ways. I mean, there are two ways. In the one hand, we have to find ways to communicate between us and within the community to understand, well, this type of campaigns and talk to young people and try to discuss where they're the same values and actually we're talking about real facts or not, and of course listen and come together with decision or a new idea. We have also to be able to create a network of information that we can rely on between us. Something that it's going on, again, sorry for the coming back to example in Chiapas, but I just spoke to them a few days ago. And again, they're as we saw in the video, they're coming together again in assemblies, communal assemblies, between communities, among communities, not only within communities, to try to discuss what's going on in the state, in the different parts of the state, and what they can do together. That's one thing. I mean, they're finding channels of information they can trust, for the one hand. On the other hand, they're coming together to discuss strategies to overcome this new menace and dangers they're confronting. And I think we can bring that from the local level to the regional level. if we can make these links of communication between movements, between countries, between I don't know, organizations, and I think that's the kind of strategies that we should be discussing. On the one hand, there was also this discussion with journalists at the meeting in Guatemala. Also, they were discussing this kind of strategies of maybe creating how they were saying a hub for information, or maybe creating a network. I mean, they haven't decided yet, and the discussion is going on, it's still going on. But that's the thing. That's the kind of strategies that we should be discussing and deciding what to do.
Thank you, Michael. I know we are almost over, but if there's any question for our audience, for our speakers, you can leave your questions in the chat. Just one last reminder. Michael, Flor, in Guatemala, one of the broad agreements was about the need to build stronger networks and alliances. I wanted to ask you, what concrete actionable steps can our audience take, regardless of where they are, to contribute to building these sustainable cross-border alliances and strengthening micro networks and macro networks in their own countries? I don't know who wishes to start.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we all can start by connecting with existing grassroots organizations or community groups in our own spaces and countries. It's a real change that we can build from the base up, but we need to come together, and that won't happen just by wishing. We need to take action into that. If you don't know where to start, like, look for those issues that you care about, and just look and see what how you can support, or just listen. But I think that the second thing that I don't want to miss the opportunity to say is that we have the opportunity and the responsibility to improve our capacity to collaborate. Like, networks should be collaboration that is alive, right? So that means not running away from difficult conversations or falling into reactivity. Instead, we need to develop our dialogue skills, which are essential and often is overlooked, like it's not that important, but it's so important. And it is as simple and challenging as noticing, paying attention on how much you speak, let's say, in a group of people, how much you take, the space, and how do you do it, and how much are you listening to, and how often do we dismiss the perspective of a person that thinks different from us. So democracy really begins with us, and without those skills, not the networks, the organizations, or the movements can survive the human challenges of being together. So I think that's a personal responsibility that we need to look closer.
I totally agree with Flor on this, and we have to come together. We have to unite our voices and bring it in one voice when it comes to discussing the type of democracy that we want. We have to become, in that sense, an actor, a civil society actor that can discuss and confront political actors and the wrongdoing. What we're doing, for example, in Mexico, we're trying to come together from different movements, particular demands from, again, indigenous communities, or environmental issues, or LGBTQ, etc., human rights NGOs, with particular demands, of course, groups of victims as well, relatives of disappeared persons. We all have particular demands, but what brings us together is the quality of our democracy in order to have access to those rights. So when it comes to the basic rule of law, the type of democracy that we're looking for, it's to have one voice. And we're trying to come together in a national alliance to defend democracy, which with some points that has to do again with accountability, checks and balances, criticizing every attempt to attack these institutions, etc. To broaden also the meaning of democracy is not only about voting or elections, it's about social equality, economic equality, political equality, and participation, and we should all push for that. And at the same time, keeping our particular demands and coming together with organizations that have the same kind of problems, helping each other. The first thing that we're doing is trying to build a protocol so we can all come together when someone's under attack. Doesn't matter if it's from one group or another, we all come together to protect. That's the first thing. And create spaces also for, I totally agree with, for dialogue, for discussion, and of course, being able to listen to others and learn and understand how the other one thinks and needs. I think that we should try to do that, and I think we can do it also in a regional space like the one in Guatemala, but maybe through internet or social media as well.
Well, thank you so much, Michael and Flor and Dayana, for this great conversation. We're at the top of the hour, but you know and I'll just say, you know, Dayana and I have been asking the questions for the most part here, but we're all working in this together. We're all doing this, you know, and we've all got our hands in the dirt, and we're gonna, you know, make this garden grow. The gathering in Guatemala reminded us that there's room for everyone in the struggle to defend democracies and our common future. And if you're listening to this webcast, I can assure you that you're not only welcome, you're much needed in this struggle. We need everybody. We encourage you to stay connected with Global Exchange. You know, our strategy from the very beginning, our slogan is building people-to-people ties, and that's exactly what we have to do in these moments of crisis is strengthen those ties, make sure that we're developing ourselves to be the best people and organizations that we can be. Everybody's going to have to fight in this struggle from wherever they are and bring other people around. So thank you again. The systemization or the kind of cliff notes from this meeting, which are quite extensive, are going to be available very soon. The team in Guatemala is working furiously on getting all of that together so that other people can participate in the richness of the conversation. We've given you just a sliver of that today. There was so many deep conversations that, you know, went into the night, went into people's hearts. There was a lot of honesty, and it was a really, you know, a beautiful moment that we want to share with all of you in as many ways as we possibly can. So thank you again, Flor García Mencos, Michael Chamberlain. Thank you to my co-host, Dayana Mosquera, who was working with Global Exchange in Bogota, Colombia. And a massive thanks to everyone, all of you who joined us today, for your unwavering commitment to defending democracy. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. You know, join us, send us a message of support. If you want to help support our networks and all the good work that we're trying to do, you know, consider writing us a check, but that's not the main point. The main point is that we need to work together as human beings that are connected, that we ignore the borders, that people are trying to put up between us. So thank you again and have a great rest of your evening.